past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Good afternoon and welcome back. Well, the Trump regime is making violating U.S. law, constitutional law, and international law fundamental elements of the administration. The administration is impounding funds authorized by Congress, refusing to return Kilmar Garcia from El Salvador, has put it on the verge of criminal contempt charges, and these discussions about taking the Panama Canal and annexing Greenland are disgusting and contemptuous. How so? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they take place in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they take place, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is Trump told us he was going to drain the swamp, while Steve Bannon made it very clear that they would deconstruct the administrative state. Trump has become the biggest swamp monster in the swamp. My guest is a multidisciplinary artist, author, independent journalist, creator, producer, and host of On the Ground, Voices of Resistance from the Nation's Capital, which you can listen to on Pacifica Radio. Esther Iverem. Esther, welcome back.
Hi, Wilmer. So glad to be with you.
So, Steve Bannon was very clear about deconstructing the administrative state. He was also clear about flooding the zone, and the zone is definitely flooded. Let's start with this issue centered around Kilmar Abrigo Garcia, the Maryland resident, legal resident, came here illegally and then was granted permission to stay by a judge. He's now languishing in an El Salvadorian prison as Senator Van Hollen today, Thursday, went to try to at least see him and was denied access. Esther, this is horrible.
I've been trying to think about what this means in terms of the longer arc of what's been happening in this country. And Wilma, I can't help but think that what we see happening to Mr. Abreu Garcia is really stems from the treatment of pro-Palestine protesters and even Muslims stemming back to 9/11. The Trump administration has intentionally targeted the most vulnerable. Where I come from, we would call him a punk, for being a bully and picking on students, sending mask-clad, plainclothes agents to snatch people off the street, to snatch students here in DC. Dr. Badar Khan Suri whose only crime was being married to a Palestinian activist. He committed no crime. Similarly, Mr. Abreu Garcia committed no crime. And I believe that it starts before this administration, but it's just expanded because Trump has been able to weaponize this slippery slope. Okay, so first you what did they call it? Sending to black sites, Muslims.
Yes, extraordinary renditions.
Extraordinary rendition. You kill Mr. Alaki after 9/11. You kill his son. Then Trump kills his daughter. Okay, so to me, this is a longer line of this slippery slope toward, because all these people are talking about authoritarianism now, and fascism. And I know I've done segments on that, but when we look at what the empire has done, this is just the latest iteration of what the empire is doing.
And it's also incredibly, people seem to have, first of all, very, very short memories, as you just articulated. We can take this all the way back to Barack Obama and to his Attorney General, Eric Holder, who told us that an American president has the right to assassinate an American citizen without judicial review.
Right. And they had a kill list. Didn't they have a weekly meeting?
A Tuesday kill list. So, and that's why, we formulated this show, Connecting the Dots, because as I said in my open, these things don't occur in a vacuum. So for as horrific and horrendous as the current Trump policies are, this is American foreign policy.
Right.
And we want to call President Xi Jinping an authoritarian, and we want to call President Vladimir Putin an authoritarian. And we want, there are a whole Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Oh, he's an authoritarian. And
no country has more blood on its hands than the United States. I mean, we can, when it comes to extraordinary rendition, I mean, maybe we could count the funding that we gave to the Chilean regime that threw people out of helicopters and, murdered scores. I don't know if the numbers are even totaled. What we did in Argentina, what we did in Chile, what we did in the Dominican Republic. And so some people say
what
it's
we're
like
doing
coming home
in Haiti.
Yes. Thank you. Don't let me ever forget Haiti. And
well, I just mentioned that because you are connecting the historic dots, and I just wanted to throw in, it's on like Donkey Kong right now in Haiti. Right.
And as well as, obviously in Gaza, obviously in South Sudan, obviously in places that don't really get any type of press coverage. It's these crimes happen undercover, across seas, in places where, there's no microphone, there's no press coverage to cover any of it.
How about the manner in which this is being used as cover to attack academia? We see what's and Harvard decided now they're going to step up and challenge this, but Columbia folded, University of Pennsylvania folded. We've got law firms folding under this pressure. But in terms of academia, this, I believe, is really being used as a cover to attack freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and academia.
Exactly. And I have to say, as a graduate of the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, I've been ashamed of the trajectory of the university. I've been heartened by people like the law professor Frankie, who's spoken out. So many students, so many professors, despite the ham-fisted authoritarianism on campus, they are intent on trying to save whatever shreds of academic freedom exist at the university. The continued detainment of Mahmoud Khalil, the recent detaining of another university student. This is just showing that the Trump administration, once given an opening, is not going to say, oh, okay, these people are trying to work with me, let me go easy on them. No, they're going to double down, because that's what a bully does. Now, I'm glad that Harvard is fighting back. I'm glad that there are some law firms fighting back, and the arguments are so obvious on their face. I mean, you can tell that we cannot have a functioning academic environment if the government, the Trump administration, thinks that they can bully people into, number one, change your curriculum, change your Department of Middle Eastern Studies, Black Studies, Latino Studies, whatever those departments were that they targeted, and put them in receivership and let my people basically have a say about what is taught. In what world is he living? Some of this stuff sounds so crazy. You're just wondering, like, what is he smoking, and can we all get some of it? It's just really,
no, because then that would make you crazy like him.
It make me crazy like him. But so it starts with Columbia. And I don't know if, I'm sure some of your listeners have seen the movie The Encampments, which really sets the record straight for what happened and how these students proceeded in a very peaceful way to try and talk to the administration. They had demands around divestment, about the role that the university was playing in propping up what is a genocide. And so we're living in this upside down world where students, academics, professionals are being targeted for speaking out and condemning genocide, when the genocidaires are the ones pointing the finger, calling them terrorists, calling them violent. Meanwhile, 100 children are dying or being murdered in Gaza every day. So we have to fight back. We have to stand tall. I was proud to march with I was with the Artists Against Apartheid contingent on April 4th here in DC in the big rally to stop the genocide and end the repression. And this is the other rally that was occurring as the Hands Off rally was happening, at the Washington Monument, at the monuments. And so I know that there are people who are not going to back down. They're not going to bow down to this crazy regime of trying to tamp down people's freedom of speech, punish them for having speech, for having opinions, for writing an op-ed in the case of Romesa Öztürk. And it just, we refuse to live in this type of dystopia. And it just takes people fighting back. And, I think that the people on the true left are up to the task. We'll see if some of the people on the true left can help to lead this somewhat aimless hands-off movement to really go outside the box, definitely go outside the box of the Democratic Party, which is not doing anything. They are not really being the opposition because they are not in opposition to empire.
I want to follow up on that, but before we get to that, the utter hypocrisy of this anti-Semitism move that they're claiming, that they're using anti-Semitism as the basis through which they are attacking academia. They are attacking as many people as they can through this, when last I checked, for as horrific as anti-Semitism is, it's not illegal. And then you go to find out, and I've heard from a number of Jewish scholars who will say the fact that the administration is using anti-Semitism as its bludgeon to attack the First Amendment is anti-Semitic in and of itself.
Exactly. And not only that, this administration, the administration before it, has successfully, unsuccessfully, you could say whatever, has married the issues of Judaism, the existence of Judaism, this ages long religion, with Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure your listeners know this, but really the core belief of this movement, the pro-Palestinian movement, is to educate people that this is not the same, that all the Jewish Voice for Peace, rabbis, other groups, if not now, on down the line, that march
not in our name,
that march in pro-Palestinian protests and have been for the past year and a half, will tell you, will swear on a stack of Bibles or Torahs or whatever, that, this is not the same. This is our religion. This is our identity as Jewish people. It has nothing to do with the Zionist state of Israel, an apartheid, genocide, producing state. It has nothing to do with that. Our identity as Jewish people is converse to this state that is practicing an apartheid and committing a genocide.
You mentioned the lack of backbone, the lack of strength, the lack of just policy from the Democrats, and they many of them seem to be following James Carville's recommendation of sit back, do nothing, and let the Republicans implode. And what seems to get lost in that is, implosion is like a black hole, and it sucks in everything around it. So you can't sit idly by and allow it to implode, because it'll suck you in at the same time, which seems to be happening to many on the Democratic side. Where are their voices as it relates to genocide?
I want to say again that, because I haven't really heard it just in many discussions, but just like there's a straight line from what, after 9/11, the criminalizing of Muslims and Islam, there's a straight line from basically ignoring a genocide for the past year and a half. I mean, what is more horrific than that? What is more violent and vile and every other, cruel and inhumane and barbaric and savage? All these words describe what has happened in Gaza. So when the violence comes home in a different way, where we are facing the elimination of basic constitutional rights, where people who are following labor law are, infuriated and very angry about the attack on the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, the attack on our social services like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. In addition to the fact that it chases or denies, campaign promises, it goes against campaign promises that he made. In addition to that, what we're experiencing here is an extension of that violence, because if you can basically make people strip away their humanity, strip away their personhood, and basically ignore the massacre and genocide of a people, then you're setting yourself up where you can be unpeopled, right? You can be unpersoned. And it doesn't matter about you, your family, your grandma. It doesn't matter. Any of that stuff matters. None of that matters, because you have accepted for the past year ignoring the obliteration of a people. So, I mean, when I heard Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, come out after the horrific attack on his family. I guess somebody tried to burn down his house.
Yes.
And he started talking about, we have to condemn this violence, and everyone should condemn this violence. I'm thinking, OMG, I wish I could have heard you condemn violence in the same way against Gaza, against Palestinian people. It almost makes the cries of people who in the hands-off movement who want to kind of put Palestine on the side, right? It almost makes them sound kind of unworthy of sympathy and solidarity. Because if you feel that way, you don't understand, because you have done that for the past year and a half. That's why what is happening to you is happening to you. I know that maybe not be a straight line for some people, but for me, having covered this for the past year and a half, there's a straight line. There's a straight line. Even without getting into the minutia of the elections and how Kamala Harris would not step away from Biden's policies. She would not say a ceasefire. Just put that all aside. Just on a human level, if people are considering themselves activists at this point, pardon me, and they want to get involved and they want to speak out and they want to just, they're fired up and they want everyone to know that they see what's going on and they don't like it. I just want them to include all of humanity in that, because if you include all of humanity, then you're really getting at the root of empire, because we can't be safe over here. We can't have all the rights over here. We can't have low prices on eggs, all our checks arriving on time, all our constitutional rights, all our labor rights, all the rights that we think we're supposed to have. If we continue to ignore the plight of people around the country, around the world, and our government is complicit in all those crimes.
I want to try to connect a couple dots here, because you talked about being unpeopled and being unpersoned as it relates to the genocide in Gaza. I've been saying since this whole deportation issue started with Mr. Garcia that the issue is not, or the target of this, I should say, is not so much illegal immigrants as it is due process. And that if Trump is able to push the envelope on this due process issue and his argument prevails, we're next. And because we will be unpeopled, we will be unpersoned, we will become the terrorists that must be removed from the country. And so those African Americans who want to sit back and say, well, I'm not Venezuelan, they're not deporting me, I'm not part of MS-13, or I'm drawing a blank on the name of the other gang in Venezuela. I'm not Palestinian. Yeah. Well, no, but the plight might be the same.
Exactly. I don't know if you saw some of this meme going around.
Tren de la Aragua. There we go.
Oh, okay. And because I don't know if you saw some of this meme going around before April 4th, the April 4th rallies, where someone posted something about, Black people need to stay home. Black people need to, and they signed it the ancestors, like sit your ass down, and signed it the ancestors, and we know a lot of that was bots, but some real people actually jumped on the thread, saying, well, why should we keep marching? Let the white people march. White people have been marching for the past year and a half. I don't know what marches they have been in. That's probably it. They haven't been in any.
Right.
But white people have been marching for the past year and a half. Jewish people, Black people, Latino people. And unfortunately, so much of the immigrant population is targeted now. They may not come out as much because, this administration will target them, like,
Right.
like take the opportunity to target people at a demonstration. So I just think that whole line of, I don't know, reasoning, if you want to call it that, it seems to follow up what was happening a few years ago in terms of was it called the ADOS movement or whatever? And there was a movement that basically said that African Americans don't have anything in common or in solidarity with people from Africa, Africans in the Caribbean, and other parts of the diaspora. And I believe that Steve Bannon had a lot to do with kind of fomenting that movement or funding it, because basically what it was trying to do was destroy the idea of Pan-Africanism.
Right.
And the fact that we are linked to people in the Congo, in South Africa, and the Caribbean, and Jamaica, all the Black people who live throughout Central and South America, because they were brought over to those places just like we were brought here. And don't forget in Europe, in London, and just throughout the whole globe. And so I don't put much stock in it. It upsets me when the conversations get traction and people are actually discussing it like it's real, because I think most of it is bots, and the people who are real kind of advocating that position, I hope it doesn't sound too strong to say, I think they're ignorant and they don't really do anything to help us survive. We need Pan-African solidarity, pan working class solidarity. We need solidarity across race, gender, and class, not just here in this country, but around the world. And so if you cut that off, that's like cutting off your own arm, right? Or both arms.
You mentioned weaponization a little earlier, and I think, is it the governor of Maine who is now in this fight over transgender students and whether or not transgender male students should be allowed to play sports with transgendered female students should not be allowed to play sports with biological female students. And the Trump administration threatened to cut off federal funding for school lunch programs. Now, no matter how you feel about the transgendered student issue, is it really that significant or that important or that powerful of a dynamic to where you're going to basically use the food for children as your weapon?
Well, it just shows you that the transgender is really not the issue. It's really the Trump administration, again, trying to use this wedge issue that resonates with a portion of his base to make states, universities, nonprofit organizations cower and bend the knee in a way that goes against their rights. So it's interesting, that in this case, because I think that before I began this conversation with you, I saw a snippet of the, I guess, gathering where Trump actually zeroed in on this governor, and she wasn't bending the knee. She wasn't cowering before him, because I think she understands there's no winning with that. And what she was talking about was states' rights. Now, you and I, those of us of a certain generation, we recognize that term in connection with, Dixiecrats and the apartheid states in the American South that wanted to continue their apartheid regimes in terms of Jim Crow. And so to have it used now where a northern state, which is considered probably definitely a bluer state than southern states, use this as a right, it's something to watch. I mean, I at this point, I'm cheering for anybody who stands up for their rights and not cower before this regime.
Well, and that point takes me back to something that I wanted to drill down a little more on, and that is, where is the voice? Where are the voices in the Democratic Party? Because we're now seeing great turnout at these Bernie Sanders, AOC, anti-oligarch rallies. Simone Sanders was on MSNBC this evening talking about this, and once again, as they did in 16 and as they did in 20, right now they're rolling Bernie Sanders out here like the bell cow or the sheep herder, the sheepdog, for the Democratic Party. And the sense that one of the mistakes that I see the Democrats making is they seem to be equating Republican discontent with support for Democrats. And when the Pew polling is showing Democrats' perspective or view of their own party is less than 27%. So when Hakeem Jeffries comes out and says, well, we don't have to pay protesters because the people are with us. Hakeem, I don't know what people you're talking about, because, homeboy, when you turn around, ain't nobody standing behind you, partner. So there's nothing of substance being offered.
Right. And so I actually I've tried not to pay too much attention to the Sanders AOC rallies for that same reason. I think that the hands-off movement might be a little bit more significant. They are talking about concrete issues like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And right now, the movement is a little rudderless, but I think it has the potential because I don't see it as being specifically stuck to the Democratic Party. There were a lot of people who came from the hands-off rally over to the Stop the Genocide, Stop the Repression rally, and were speaking out on the issues of free speech, all these other issues happening at home and what's happening in Gaza. And so I think that as the weeks go on, you're going to see more of an effort of the true left to try to integrate these movements, to try to talk to disaffected Democrats, because I agree with you. I don't see them going back. The people who did not vote or voted alternative or, did something else in 2024, I don't see the Democrats showing them anything to vote for.
No.
Right. They're not showing them anything to vote for. Right. So that's where we are. It's a very strange moment. That's the best word I can come up with right now. But as you see the Trump administration go from bad to worse every day, there's some new transgression against basic human rights, civil rights, constitutional rights. There's no, it's pretty much been up to lawyers, the courts, those lawyers still willing to take this administration to court. The protesters, the true left, willing to still march in the streets and say, we do not submit, we do not concur, we do not bend the knee. And it's really going to be, it's going to have to take a ramped up movement of civil disobedience, continued protests, a continued galvanizing of the public, so that people don't feel like there's no use. I mean, the idea that the American people could lose hope that they can make a difference is very scary to me. I mean, what good does an apathetic public do, really?
Well, and to that question, I think the Democratic leadership, they are missing an incredible opportunity as you look at these town hall meetings that are being held by Republicans, and these things are well attended, And these folks are pissed. They are, and so much so, as you know, that Mike Johnson told his group, told his caucus, don't have these anymore. The optics are horrible. And so if the Democrats were able to step into this vacuum and offer something substantive, they would, I'm not going to say bring all those cows into the barn, but they would at least start giving people something to seriously think about as we're looking at the midterms in 2026. But they're not seizing this moment. I don't know that they have anything to, I mean, it's pretty obvious what they should be offering, but they don't seem to think that their argument is, we don't have the control of the House, we don't have control of the Senate, so it's a waste of our time. No, it's when somebody is out there clamoring for an answer, it's not a waste of your time to give them an answer.
Right. As much as I view, Representative Al Green, I think of Texas, as much as I've seen much of many of his actions in the past in terms of impeachment, just kind of like this sideshow that was just falling like to nothing, at least in the State of the Union or whatever that was. He stood up and he said he was standing up for his constituents. It may not have gone off that well, maybe he should have let them carry him out, but at least he stood up and made the point that he was speaking up for his people in his district who were afraid about their Social Security. They were afraid about their Medicaid, their Medicare, because, Trump took that opportunity to tell all these lies about Social Security. Like there was about to be a full-on onslaught on Social Security. Now, the other thing I thought about when you asked that question is on Wednesday night, I saw a little snippet. It might actually be that same snippet you saw with Simone Sanders talking about, she was interviewing David Hogg. Now, people remember David Hogg as a leader from the March for Our Lives movement after the terrible student massacre in Florida. One of many, but he came out of that movement, and he is an actual vice chair in the DNC. And he was talking about how he was leading a movement, even though there are people in the Democratic Party supposedly angry with him, scarecrows, okay, because he wants to primary some of the people he feels are out of touch in the Democratic Party. And some media organizations have spun this to say he's targeting older, the older class of Democrats. Now, he says that's not the case, but we know that the Democratic Party is led by basically octogenarians. He says that if Gen X was represented in the party in proportion to their numbers in the population, there would be something like 40 members of the generation. Is it X or Z or Y? Z. Okay. These numbers, letters, whatever.
Right.
And so, but, you don't hear from even someone like him, who's, I'm sure he's well-intentioned. He's talking about age, and he's talking about people who are out of touch with the desires and the real concerns of young people. But what young people is he talking about? The Democratic Party basically ran the last election ignoring young people who were in the streets, who were marching, who were saying, stop the genocide, stop using my tax dollars to murder women and children by the scores each day. Stop saying it's in my name as a Jewish person or as an American person that you're doing this in this screwed up foreign policy that we absolutely hate. So I didn't really hear the nuance in terms of what David Hogg was saying that would be any better, really, because how do you recruit newer people to run in a party whose platform is going to be diametrically opposed to any progressive person, be they young, middle-aged, or elderly.
Two things. One, you mentioned Al Green, and it's important for people to remember he stood up by himself.
Right.
He was
just like Rashida Tlaib held up her sign when Netanyahu, a war criminal, was speaking before Congress, getting the most disgraceful day ever in Congress, getting standing ovations. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
And he was carried out of the chamber by himself. And then when the Republicans put up the vote to censure him, 10 Democrats voted to censure him. That, to me, speaks volumes about the disconnect. And yes, you and I were watching the same MSNBC piece with Simone. And did you hear her when she said, as the former communications director for Bernie Sanders, I'd be with you on this. But as a member of the DNC, I can't be. Well, why do those two things have to be, they don't have to be mutually exclusive? Because to me, she's demonstrating very clearly the disconnect in the Democratic Party. You use Bernie Sanders as a sheepdog. Then you cut him off at the knees, Hillary Clinton and what's her name from Florida, this congresswoman from Florida with the curly blonde hair.
Mm-hmm. Wasserman Schultz.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You cut Bernie Sanders off at the knees.
Right.
When if it had been Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Right.
But to me, Simone's statement proves the very inherent conflict within the party.
Yeah, this was just, hearsay, but there was some talk that when these big rallies started with Bernie Sanders and AOC, that some of her base, which includes DSA, wanted to push for another party. They wanted these rallies to push for another party. And a lot of people believe that the time is right. Now, the third parties that ran in 2024, they were actually doing pretty well until the Democrats convinced so much of the base that, no, the race is so tight that if you vote third party, you're basically giving the race to Trump. But it wasn't that close.
Right.
It wasn't that close in any swing state that
didn't win one.
Trump swept. But a lot of people wanted another bite at the apple, I think. And they're so convinced that the duopoly we have right now cannot be fixed. It cannot be reformed. That we've come from a Democratic Party that basically advocated for a genocide for 18 months or for a full year. Then we have a new administration in that's just an extension of the same empire and the same foreign policy and the same domestic policy, but just ramped up in a very opportunistic way. There are a lot of Democrats who've wanted to go after Social Security and who speak out against things they call so-called entitlements, as if, we have not paid into Social Security and Medicare all our lives. Now, Musk wants to call it a Ponzi scheme. It's only a Ponzi scheme because there's an income cutoff where the richest people stop paying into it.
Right.
All the problems we solved, and I know you know this, and I know your listeners know this. So the fact that you have this billionaire, which is really, really what set Trump down on the wrong path. Before all this latest stuff, I don't understand how he doesn't understand having the world's richest man cut off Big Mama's Social Security, or threatening to, or and his is this Commerce Secretary, one of them, saying only fraudsters will object if they don't get their Social Security. That's not right, Mister Rich Moneybags. You know,
he's a billionaire. He's a hedge fund
exactly
hedge fund guy.
What percentage? It's some super majority of people. Basically, that's all they have as retirement, right?
It's 32% of African American. I don't know the national number, but I do know it's 32% of African Americans over the age of 65.
Yeah.
Social Security is their sole source of retirement, and the average payout is about $1,800 a month, which equates to around $23,000 a year. So they're still living below the poverty line. That's in our community. Right.
But and a lot of his base, they're in the same boat though, you know, and at a lot of these rallies for hands off, people have talked about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in one breath. There hasn't been like a cutoff, like, oh, we don't care about those poor people on Medicare or Medicaid, because a lot of them are on Medicaid also. And the more you have jobs that don't pay well, the more people actually qualify, especially if your state has expanded Medicaid through Obamacare, which I guess, I don't know what the state of that is. They're probably trying to tear that down to get rid of that. But a lot of people qualify for Medicare and for Medicaid, and it's not a one-off issue that they've been able to kind of segregate off to people, another population that Americans aren't supposed to care about.
So let me ask you this as we're moving towards wrapping up the conversation. As we look at this tariff regime and we look at the fight that President Trump, and this tariff thing is, it would be funny if it weren't so pathetic. It runs the gamut from the McDonnell Islands off the coast of Australia, which are inhabited by penguins. There are only there are sanctions on the McDonnell Islands, and the only living things on the island are penguins, all the way to China.
Wait a minute, is there oil there?
No, just penguins.
No, but are there undiscovered oil deposits there?
Well,
or something?
If there may be. I know there's a whole lot of penguin poop. I know that. So so there's a 20% tariff if you're planning to import penguin poop. But he's picked this fight with China, and this is something that he didn't have to do.
Exactly.
It makes absolutely no sense. I don't know if you remember the story of the guy that was on an airplane sitting behind Mike Tyson, and the guy kept kicking Mike Tyson's seat.
I don't know that story, but I can imagine how it is.
Well, so and this was like about a year and a half ago. And Mike was very calm and he said, "Sir, would you please?" And the guy just kept messing with him. And finally, as the folks on the plane described it, a hurricane came over the top of that seat, and they had to carry this man off the plane on a stretcher. Mike took care of that business. So
wow.
The point of that analogy is the man brought it on himself, or as they would say when I was at Christian Brothers High School in Sacramento, you are a victim of your own event. So if these tariffs go the direction that many economists believe they will, decimating this economy, how do you see the response in, let's say, 3 months, 4 months? How do you see as we're moving into the summer and the temperature rises? How do you see, what kind of response do you see from the grassroots? What should we be looking at, or what should we be concerned about?
Well, on the one hand, I believe that the masses are mobilized and are mobilizing.
Mm-hmm.
And just like in 2020, when we had Trump in office at that time, he will attempt to use the most ham-fisted approach to any type of dissent. And it will be the task of Americans to not cower in front of that and to demand our First Amendment rights to march, to speak, to do whatever we need to do in terms of peaceful assembly. Some people believe that it's time for civil disobedience, which is another form of peaceful assembly and protest. And I think that, in many ways, because of the duopoly, we're home alone, we're on our own, and we need leadership to arise from us,
Mm-hmm.
From people who are not part of the duopoly, because, Bernie could be sheep herding people into the Democratic Party, maybe, but if the crowds get wind of that, or they really sense that, those crowds are going to shrink.
Oh, no, what?
They're going to shrink, and people are going to be looking for something else, just like they've been looking for something else for the past year and a half. You shouldn't predict the long hot summer, and those of us who have some memory of the 60s and 70s, we understand what that means. But
all this gray hair will tell you I sure do.
Yeah, that could be what's happening. I don't really see any other avenue right now. Like, the people, we have no champion really making the case in Congress,
right.
We have no champion in the courts per se. I mean, the Supreme Court, they gave the most mealy-mouthed ruling that they could on Mr. Abreu Garcia, right? And that's
let me on that point.
Yeah,
people need to understand that from what I've read, that John Roberts wanted a 9-0 decision, and that was the compromise that he had to strike in order to get, because it should have been bring him home yesterday.
Right.
And this facility, it reminded me of the Brown decision, the Brown v. Board of Education decision, with all deliberate speed.
Right.
Integrate the schools with all deliberate speed. To me, it was a similar mindset.
Right. And the courts, just, we need our lawyers, our activist lawyers, our lawyers that want to stand up for people's rights to stand up right now. And I know that it's not all about the law. It's not all about the courts, but between that and the people seizing the power in the streets, not, refusing to be silenced, refusing to go along, to get along, to cower and be quiet, just with the hope that if we shrink ourselves small enough, they may not come for us. That's not the answer. And so all the Black people who were talking about, well, I'm not Venezuelan, I'm not got Palestinian. No, you're not, but you are Black. And if you think that you are not in the crosshairs of this regime, you are, again, they're smoking something. And okay, maybe we don't want any of that, but they definitely are smoking something.
Esther Iverem, thank you. You are so gracious, and you fit us in when you could have not. So thank you.
No.
Thank you, Esther. I greatly appreciate it. And
always happy to join you, Wilmer. I enjoy conversations. It always renews my faith in humanity when I talk to you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. That's quite a compliment and a responsibility. Now I got to go out and make something happen. Damn it, Esther. Anyway, thank you, dear. Take care.
Okay.
Again, You're so gracious. Really appreciate it. And folks, you really need to. She has a phenomenal show on the ground, Voices of Resistance from the Nation's Capital, which you can hear on Pacifica stations and on the ground
Also
voices.
podcast.
And where's the podcast? YouTube?
It's on all podcast platforms, including Spotify and Android and Apple. The podcast is On the Ground with Esther Iverem.
Okay. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Folks, thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Podcasts with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned. New episodes next week. Also, Misty Winston is going to join us on Monday. Misty Winston will join us on Monday with her analysis. Please follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show. You can go back and watch old broadcasts of the program, and phenomenal folks. Dr. Radhika Desai, Linwood Tawhid. The list is a phenomenal list of minds. Dr. Gerald Horn, Margaret Kimberly. It's a phenomenal list. Follow us on social media, share all the links. Remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all Monday. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.